Welcome, learners, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're tackling a fascinating and, frankly, incredibly unusual set of sources.
Definitely unusual.
It really takes us down the rabbit hole of perception and information. We've got a unique challenge because our source material isn't just one type of document, but two distinct yet interconnected explorations.
That's right. Our first source is an excerpt from what's called a subliminal investigation transcript. It's from the Calogero Grifasi Academy.
Okay.
And in this session, you have a hypno-operator and a telepathic supporter delving into what they perceive as the etheric DNA and, well, the metaphysical reality around Pope Leo XIV, Robert Francis Prevost.
Right, Prevost. And the second source.
The second is a disclosures video. This one's by Calogero Grifasi himself. And here he explains the methodology, the challenges, and importantly, the limitations of this exact type of investigative hypnosis.
Okay, so our mission today is sort of twofold then. First, we're going to unpack the incredibly intriguing and, mind-bending claims made during this subliminal investigation. You'll hear about visions, past lives, hidden agendas, secret symbolisms, all of
For
it.
the juicy stuff.
But then, right after, we'll turn to that second source, Grifasi's explanation,
Yeah.
which gives us a critical lens on how to even interpret this kind of information.
Exactly. This deep dive isn't just about the fascinating claims themselves, though they are fascinating. It's really about understanding the unique methods used to gather these insights.
And the challenges.
And the inherent challenges, yes. Discerning reliable information in these, let's say, unconventional realms. It's about being well-informed, not just on what is claimed, but really how that information comes to be.
How it's generated and filtered.
Precisely. So let's unpack this.
Let's do it. Let's start with the claims from the investigation into Pope Leo XIV.
Yeah.
This was Protocol 1 of Investigative Cycle 283,
Right.
conducted by Alina Giosa, who's an external operator and student, and Claudia, the telepathic supporter. And it was a mixed protocol.
Yeah, meaning some fixed questions, but also room for free exploration. And crucially, Claudia, the telepath, she was intentionally kept in the dark about the theme.
Ah, to avoid bias.
Exactly, to avoid contaminating information, as they put it. Make sure her perceptions were, as pure as possible within their framework.
So what did Claudia perceive initially about Prevost's etheric DNA, this non-physical genetic stuff, even before he was elected pope?
Well, the first hit was pretty dramatic, a red serpent.
The serpent.
Yeah, but described as standing, almost, bipedal.
Wow, okay.
And this serpent symbolized what they called his primary hybridization, present right from the start of his incarnation.
So like a core part of his metaphysical makeup.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And this hybridization allegedly gave him access to higher steps in the hierarchy of these shadow entities who operate behind the scenes, and they were clear it was a hybridization different from what they term a classic reptiloid.
Interesting distinction. Okay, so what about the actual moment of his election, viewed metaphysically?
That was seen as a turbulence of movements between DNAs, a real contradiction between multiple DNAs.
Like a clash.
Sort of, and Prevost seemed to be displaying his many DNAs, but not to us, not to humans. He was showing them off to these background entities.
And what DNAs were perceived then?
The main ones were the red, from that serpent we mentioned, a high-level gray, they specified it was different from the common gray type, and also fragments of black. Those black fragments apparently became clearer after his investiture.
So a mix.
A real crucible of DNAs was the feeling, and Prevost presenting himself as the right one, the one who represents most of their interests to these background entities.
The investigation also looked into a past life.
It did, yes, and found some interesting parallels.
Like what?
He appeared as a hunched man in religious clothes, like a monk,
Okay.
but not a public figure. He was described as a shadow person, someone who pulled strings and conducted things from behind the scenes.
Similar theme.
Very similar. And his complex genetic constitution, this hybridization, was seen as what allowed him to do this important energetic work. Always a number 2, apparently.
And content with that.
Seemingly, yes. Viewed it as his life's assumed and conscious experience. But he was perceived as a hard figure, not gentle, had a harsh gaze he could mask for the public, a real director behind the scenes.
So moving forward, what about the phase before this current life,
Yeah.
leading up to the papacy?
He was seen in more direct relation with his superiors, these entities again,
Right.
and he showed a kind of humility, perceived as asking for a new role, wanting to experience something else, move up a step.
But the superiors weren't immediately sold?
There was hesitation, yeah, as if they were weighing up other genetic combinations that might be, quote, more important for their plans. But Prevost's desire was clear. Serve their agenda, but at a higher, more public level this time.
And the name he chose, Leo the 14th. Any vibrational insight there?
They connected it to a black lion.
A black lion. Interesting.
Yeah, another hybridization, apparently, with a heavy, vast black aspect to it. The feeling was aggressiveness, imposition, domination. Lion traits, sure, but with a strange, unseen quality.
And there was a link to prophecy about his election.
A definite link, yes. Specifically involving the word last.
Last.
Like the last pope.
Well, it wasn't that simple. The word reportedly reverberated and repeated as if in a tunnel, suggesting it wasn't singular, it depended on many other factors. But the answer to, was it linked to prophecy, was a clear yes.
And what feeling did that connection bring up?
Sensations of trembling, chaos, panic, but not from natural disasters. This was man-made stuff, leading people to look for direction. And the number 14 for his name was noted as a specific detail in this context.
Okay, shifting focus a bit. What about the global geopolitical impact they perceived from his election?
That was visualized as a serpent's back.
The serpent again,
Yeah.
meaning indicating a contortion of old political structures, unexpected changes. The serpent imagery specifically highlighted his DNA's ability to forge these cunning false agreements, things that look real but have hidden facets.
So instability.
The very slippery period, yeah. Abrupt and non-profound changes designed to sow discord and greater chaos, basically overturning the existing scenarios.
And the overall nature of his pontificate itself, how is that described?
As unpleasant. The red color, tied to his DNA and symbolizing blood globally, was dominant. Not that he causes it all directly, but it happens during his reign.
So a time of conflict.
Visions of foci of conflict erupting worldwide, igniting and extinguishing in different spots, a turbulent period. The first part was seen as having more chaos than the second part.
And his personal style through this.
A constant underlying theme of domination, presenting one face publicly while ruling with an iron fist, a very clear duality.
Let's go back to these superior entities for a moment. Were they identified more specifically?
Yes, two distinct beings were perceived as his main superiors.
Who were they?
One was described as a classic reptiloid, but high-ranking bipedal. The other was a very vast being, identified as an egregor.
An egregor. Like a collective thought form?
Exactly like that in this context. Described as being formed from multiple DNA pieces, including that red serpent DNA and even a percentage of humanoid DNA. It was seen as an elevated algorithm, cold, mathematical, choosing the best variant based on circumstances.
And Prevost's DNAs that he displayed.
Were seen as fragmented aspects of this egregor.
I see. So the red serpent DNA was directly linked to these superiors.
Directly linked. But interestingly, Prevost's expression of it was perceived as not perfect.
Ah, which led to that humility before reincarnation.
That's the connection they made, yes. The egregor apparently wanted a more complex insertion of this DNA in him. There was even a perceived subliminal discussion where the egregor challenged Prevost about the difficult times ahead, saying he'd need to fully express all his DNAs, and Prevost affirmed he could when needed.
What other DNAs were mentioned again?
Besides the red serpent and the eventual black Draconoid, there was that high-rank gray described as like dirty white, and also about 47% humanoid DNA, a rarer type, more human-like, apparently serving as his interface for public interactions.
The interface. Okay, now there was also something about a childhood prophecy. A neighbor predicting he'd be the first American pope.
Right, when he was in first grade, that moment was seen as a thinning of the veil, a brief connection between the material and metaphysical.
And its purpose.
It was interpreted as a signal or an impulse from these subtle entities, kind of a pat on the shoulder to make him aware of his destiny, guide his growth orientation.
And encourage the hybridization.
Exactly. Encourage that genetic hybridization to develop, steer him away from a normal child's life, because his human DNA was just the interface,
Got it. Then, after his investiture as pope, another DNA emerged. The Draconoid one.
Yes, previously latent Draconoid DNA became apparent, characterized by inner aggressiveness, a gleam in the eye.
And the investiture triggered it.
It gave it wings, allowed him to show it to others, signifying, they claimed, that he serves multiple masters and is now perceived as invincible.
Did the superiors know about this hidden DNA?
Apparently, yes, but they kept it under wraps to ensure he got elected, and its expression was linked to those slippery situations and the aggressiveness foreseen for his pontificate.
What about the date of the election, May 8th? Any symbolism there?
Linked to maximum potential. There were visions of the moon cut in half, talk of inverse senses related to rituals. The number 8 itself was seen as the infinity symbol, lying down.
Connecting back to the serpent.
Yes, connecting to the serpent DNA. Symbolizing the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail. Constant renewal, a refusal of the last in a cycle. Always restarting.
And the reason for choosing the name Leo XIV specifically? We heard the black lion, but anything else?
Again, tied to that non-classic lion silhouette and his complex DNA. The silhouette apparently showed luminous corners or rays, suggesting his influence would reach distant areas, specifically the Orient. It was described as a closed circuit from his DNA, activating specific genetic parts to create influence there. Through false promises and agreements, using the similarity of his DNA to influence certain groups. The image used was a wolf in sheep's clothing, but significantly a wolf with multiple DNAs.
Okay. And his pontifical motto, "In him who is one, let us be one." What was the metaphysical take on that?
On that level, it was seen as an arc of a circle made of energy, representing the main families of entities or races acting in symbiosis.
So the one isn't God in this view?
Not directly. It referred to a unique conduct in approaching humanity from these entities, implying high-level agreements for domination, seeking more unity, and fewer contradictions among themselves.
And how did that translate to humans?
To us, it looks like a call for uniting religions and beliefs. But metaphysically, it was perceived as a desperate attempt by the entities to get humanity under one religious ruler. An attempt they see as ultimately failing, but it's a role they continue to play, always looking for new hooks or lures.
What about his blazon, the coat of arms? Keys, mitre, lily, flaming heart.
Right. Those symbols were described as pagan, linked to masonry and rituals.
Any specific symbols stand out?
The flaming heart, particularly, connected to the red color and blood, symbolizing creating wounds and conflicts.
So a contradiction to messages of peace.
Exactly. They claimed that while the Pope speaks of peace, the blazon symbolized a game to actually bring about war. Peace is offered, chaos follows, then their pre-planned solutions are rolled out. Their classic contradictory style.
Any symbol.
Represented one of the multiple masters he serves. The keys specifically implied his ability to open any door because of all these connections.
Wow.
The red and white robes were symbolic, yes. Perceptions of small spirals or stylized serpent designs in gold thread on the red parts, directly representing his DNA and power.
Enduring his address.
An extremely evil gaze from one of the superior entities was perceived.
Perceived by Claudia.
Yes, described as a satyr-like figure, but with Draco DNA and a bit of human DNA as a lion, a binder. This entity seemed to have actually materialized for a moment.
Materialized. Physically.
That was the perception, reportedly surprised by the physical experience, but happy.
How? What allowed that?
The crowd's energy. It was observed becoming like gel or plastiline, incredibly dense and synchronized, and this energy was directly taken and used by entities for this materialization.
And the Pope's role in this?
He acted as a catalyst, embracing and transmitting the energy, but not having it pass through and just stimulating it, potentiating it.
Was his plan?
Apparently unexpected and spontaneous, even for the entities involved, and then it just dissipated.
What did the materialized entity do?
Despite being surprised, it tried to capture as much experience as possible, literally sniffing the air like a dog, absorbing pure energy from the people, but with contempt.
And other entity.
Were observed recording the moment. Why? To try and recreate it later, the goal being to materialize more evolved beings on Earth for direct impact, chaos, manipulation.
Intense. What about his American citizenship? Was that significant beyond just being American?
The perception was it wasn't about his origin per se, it was a symbol to show the world. He came from a dominating zone to elicit obedience.
Okay.
It also symbolized a reversal of power poles happening in America, which was mirrored by a similar shift within the Catholic Church, a clear mirror effect intended to empower changes.
Looking towards the end of his pontificate, what was seen?
The world was perceived as settling on more stable parameters. But his original plan, whatever it was not totally fulfilled.
Why not?
Golden pillars appeared, representing humanity's energy becoming more profound, not easily shaken.
So the chaos backfired.
In a way, yes. The chaos created early on inadvertently led to a mass awakening, undesired by the entities, but seen as an inevitable positive rebound effect due to duality and their own limited powers.
And this awakening meant?
Humanity started finding solutions within themselves, not looking for external validation. This limited the entity's long-term control. Their ideal scenario is continuous panic, chaos, obedience, making people desperately ask for help from them.
So how does the Pope manage to hide all these perceived contradictions from the public eye?
Like all world leaders, they claim, he presents a benevolent, polished interface to maintain the illusion for the masses.
Using those different DNAs.
Exactly, selecting the desired one for the situation. Especially the human DNA for public stuff. Discerning his true nature, they state, relies entirely on human discernment.
And finally, what about his death and next life?
On death, he returns to that pre-reincarnation space. But his hybrid DNA seem less hybridized, kind of faded.
The superiors aren't happy.
Not entirely satisfied, no. They seem to sort of withdraw the DNAs they pumped into him.
And his human part.
His human DNA is perceived as having grown, and he seems to prefer a simpler path now, abandoning the desire for a big public role.
So his next life.
Perceived as one of simplicity, no longer in the sphere of power or religion, still connected to entities, but sort of left in peace, as he's no longer useful to them at the moment.
One last point from the investigation. That alliance of entities, the one in the motto, why are they allied?
The perception is they're being pushed into a corner, changing universal conditions and cycles are limiting their expression.
So it's forced cooperation.
They're forced to be one to survive, basically. Either they raise consciousness, which is seen as impossible for most of them, or they fight as a common body to extract energy from humans who comply. They realize that united, they can have more energy. It's about survival.
That was quite a narrative. An incredibly detailed, intricate, and certainly unconventional story about Pope Leo XIV, genetics, past lives, entities.
Wow, it's a lot to take in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now let's pivot. We need to look at the methodological context. How does Calogero Grifasi himself explain interpreting information from investigative hypnosis like this?
Right, and this is crucial. Grifasi states very, very clearly that a single investigative hypnosis session, like the one we just spent all this time detailing, is, and I quote, absolutely useless for getting factual, verifiable information.
Wow, absolutely useless. That's a strong statement from the source himself.
It is. He emphasizes that the percentage of contamination, distortion of information in hypnosis is extremely high.
Why so high?
While he says information travels through many dimensions, many consciousnesses, all of these can distort it, voluntarily or involuntarily.
Okay.
Plus, the person receiving the information interprets it through their own filters, mental structure, beliefs, culture, past experiences, everything. He uses an analogy.
Which is?
Trying to communicate underwater using sounds meant for air. The sound gets completely distorted. That's how he sees information passing through these layers.
Okay, so if a single session is useless for facts, what is its purpose in their system? Why do it?
He's very clear on this too. The info from one session is not meant to be memorized or taken as truth. Its sole purpose is as a vehicle of movement or transport towards the cause of the problem for the client in that session.
Ah, so it's a therapeutic tool.
Oh.
For personal insight for the person under hypnosis.
Exactly, to help them work on their own issues. It's positioned for personal work, not for objective external investigation in that isolated context.
That's a critical distinction. So if they do want to conduct what they consider true investigation using this method, how do they go about it?
He says it's a long, difficult, tiring work. It requires a team and, critically, multiplying the number of sessions. We're talking thousands.
Thousands.
Thousands of sessions, conducted by many different people over many years. Only then, he says, can you start to find potentially reliable information.
And how do they identify that reliable information?
It's only the information that shows up consistently. The stuff that is the same in all or almost all of those thousands of sessions. That's the only stuff they consider reliable.
Can you give us some examples of what they do consider reliable based on that massive cross-referencing?
Sure. He mentions things like general characteristics of grays, Insectoids like praying mantises, reptilians, lizards, serpents. Also, the color of Mars apparently comes up consistently.
Interesting.
The idea of etheric, non-physical undergrounds beneath major cities, and certain types of implants found in the body during sessions. These are things they've seen repeatedly across many operators and subjects over time.
But even with those examples, what's the overall reliability rate?
He states the reliable percentage is very low, his estimate, maybe 2–3%.
Only 2 or 3%.
That's what he says. The rest he calls garbage. Just noise, distortion, individual interpretations.
That's staggering. Such a small signal and so much noise. Are there other challenges like just accessing information at all?
Yes, absolutely. He talks about information authorization. A person's subliminal consciousness might just not give authorization for info to be revealed.
Okay.
Now, if an entity is already interfering with someone, that apparently opens a channel so info can pass. But if you're investigating someone with no current interference link, you might get nothing.
Or worse.
Or worse. Cunning entities might pretend to be the source you're looking for and feed you distorted information for their own reasons. Another layer of potential deception.
He used an analogy for source reliability too, right?
Yeah, comparing it to news sources. Seeking news from an official site, like a major news outlet, versus a random blog with hardly any followers.
The official site isn't perfect.
Right. He acknowledges it might be manipulated at high levels, but there's generally a baseline reliability due to public scrutiny, established methods. The random blog offers no such guarantee about where the info came from or its accuracy. It's about evaluating the source's consistency and process.
So given all these hurdles, the tiny reliability rate, authorization issues, the need for thousands of sessions, what kind of investigations are they actually doing now?
They're conducting what they call investigative cycles, using many sessions, diverse people with good hypnotic ability. But crucially, they focus on restricted spaces and specific themes.
Like the pedophilia example he gave.
Exactly, like pedophilia in the Catholic Church. They avoid investigating big events or really generic topics because that would need an abnormal, basically impossible number of sessions to get any reliable data.
So they have to narrow it down.
Massively. Generic themes get subdivided into themes and details. They filter for the common info within those narrow slices and then slowly piece that together over time to build a more complete, hopefully reliable picture.
Right. So you, the listener, have just heard this incredibly intricate, specific narrative about Pope Leo XIV. Extraordinary details, alleged genetics, past lives, metaphysical forces. It's a really captivating story, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And this, right here, is where it gets really interesting. Because when we hold that fascinating narrative from one single session up against Calogero Grifasi's own detailed explanation of the method
and its limitations.
And its severe limitations, what does that reveal? You now have the tools, hopefully, to consider both sides, the compelling claims, and the very unique, very challenging method used to get them.
Yeah, this deep dive really highlights a profound tension. You've got the allure of secret knowledge, these incredible hidden insights.
Especially about powerful figures.
Right, versus the extremely rigorous demands, the inherent difficulties of actually verifying that information, especially from such unconventional sources. Really makes you ask, what stands out to you, the listener, having heard both the story and the context by now was obtained?
And it raises that critical question, doesn't it? If the practitioners themselves say only maybe 2–3% of information from thousands of sessions might be reliable, what does that realistically mean for a single, highly detailed account like the one about Pope Leo XIV? It doesn't necessarily dismiss the experience of Claudia, the telepath, or its potential use in a personal therapy context.
Right, the purpose Grifasi mentioned.
Exactly. But it really forces us to think critically about claiming that output as factual or objective truth about the external world. The real insight here might be less about absolute truth and more about understanding the complex landscape of perceived reality and just how challenging it is to translate these deeply subjective internal experiences into something verifiable.
Wow, what a journey that was. Through some truly complex claims and, I'd say, even more complex methodologies.
Definitely complex on both fronts.
So today, you've gained a unique look into one specific, very intriguing case. But maybe more importantly, you've gained a deeper insight into the nature of acquiring and interpreting information, especially from these metaphysical or non-standard realms.
We've really seen how a highly detailed reading or perception can be presented, but we've also heard directly from the originator of the method why they cautions so heavily against taking any single session as definitive fact.
Yeah.
And hopefully that helps you grasp that being truly well-informed isn't just about gathering data points or cool stories. It's about understanding the source, the potential distortions, the context.
The how as much as the what.
Exactly. The how is critical.
So as you go about your day, encountering all sorts of information, conventional stuff, unconventional stuff like this, here's maybe something to mull over. How does understanding this intricate process of subliminal investigation, with all its built-in challenges and caveats, how does that impact your own personal approach to discernment? How does it help you navigate a world just brimming with claims, facts, and, yeah, some pretty fascinating unknowns?